What's up guys, welcome to today's video. As you know, I have been loving doing more like informative, helpful content. Of course, I like sharing like vlogs, day in the life type stuff, but I've been loving doing more like sit down or informational format videos, and I hope you've been loving them too. If we get into this video and you're enjoying it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. But basically what today's video is my 5 top tips for improving your workouts. Anyone can, do a program, look at a workout. These are your 5, 10 exercises. These are your sets, these are your reps. Anyone can go through that and go through the motions and, check that off their to-do list. But you won't necessarily be getting that great of a workout unless you are being intentional with it, unless you're executing, unless you're keeping your intensity where it needs to be. And these are basically my main tips for getting the most out of your workout. You don't want to go to the gym for an hour and then have it basically be a waste of an hour. You want to go to the gym and maximize your time. You don't need to be in there for hours on end. You don't need to be there 7 days a week. But when you do go, make sure that you're making it count. So follow these 5 tips and you will be sure to maximize your workouts. So keep in mind with each of these tips, I am going to have scientific studies to back up what I'm saying. All of those studies will be linked in the description box if you're interested. A lot of people don't really care to hear the nitty-gritty scientific stuff or don't have time to sit down and watch a long video of me discussing it all. So I've just put everything in the description box. If you do want to do any further reading or see where this information is coming from, then the resources are all down below. But I'm just letting you guys know that everything I'm saying is backed up by scientific evidence, anecdotal experience from me and many other people, and yeah, everything's legit. Tip number 1 is to warm up. Now I know a lot of us get to the gym and we feel like we're in a rush or we're just antsy to get into our workout and we'll skip the warm up. I'm guilty of this. Many people are guilty of this. But it just comes down to the fact that warming up is going to increase the quality of your workout, which this is what this is all about. And 2, it will help you prevent injury, which is super, super important, especially for your long-term health, your long-term results. Long story short, warm-ups are super important. And the first step of a good warm-up is called a general warm-up. And this is regardless of what lift you're doing, what sport you're playing, no matter what, you wanna do some sort of general warm-up. And the first phase of that is elevating your core temperature. So typically what that looks like is gonna be like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 15 on a cardio machine. So let's say you're doing a lower body workout that day. You might wanna do some Stairmaster or jog or incline walk or even elliptical, which also will be a good upper body option. Other good upper body options are rowing, if you have like a Jacob's ladder maybe. So basically you want to warm up your entire body, and especially I like to do machines that are, applicable to whatever I'm gonna be working out that day. By raising your core temperature, you're just priming your body for exercise. By getting things moving, you're getting your blood flowing, you're lubricating your joints, and overall, this is like a really crucial step. It also helps you mentally prepare for the session ahead. You can think about what exercises you're gonna do, what things you specifically want to work on, and get in the right headspace to get a good workout. Put your music on and just get in the zone. It kind of makes or breaks the whole session. So take your time with that 5 to 15 minutes of light cardio. You don't want to be doing HIIT as your warm-up, and then move into the next phase of a general warm-up, which is going to be dynamic stretching. Now, the difference between static and dynamic stretching is static is you go into a stretched position and then hold it for a prolonged period of time, like 60, 90 seconds, more than that. And dynamic stretching is more working your limb or your joint through a full range of motion. That could be something like a leg swing or like a walking quad stretch or Frankenstein's, or different types of movements that move your joints through a full range of motion. It can be arm swings, it can be lots of different things, but basically you want to loosen up that joint, loosen up those muscles. When selecting which dynamic stretches you want to do, you want to pick ones that are applicable to your workout. So if you're doing an upper body only workout, then you don't necessarily need to do walking quad pulls or any sort of lower body dynamic exercises. But if you're doing a full body workout, which I tend to do a lot of the time, then maybe doing a full body dynamic warm up is a good idea. Now, you want to avoid doing any sort of prolonged static stretching. There actually are some conflicting studies. Some say it is not detrimental or even beneficial, but most studies will say that long static stretching will actually decrease your performance and potentially increase your chance for injury. So I personally avoid it. If you are really particularly tight in a certain area, then maybe do it. It's really kind of based on personal preference, but generally the literature says that prolonged static stretching is not the best idea. If you are gonna stretch, then do a light stretch and release. Don't sit there for, a minute or two at a time. And if you are really sore or really tight in a specific area, then maybe foam rolling is a good option for you. A lot of people advocate for foam rolling before your workout. There isn't a ton of research to say that it improves the quality of your workouts. If there is, and maybe I just missed it, definitely let me know. But as far as I know, there isn't a huge bulk of evidence that foam rolling before your workout is better than, say, dynamic stretching or increasing your core temperature. However, it has been shown to increase your range of motion, increase your flexibility in certain areas. So if you're really tight or really sore there, then maybe foam rolling is a good option for you. But again, you don't want to sit there and foam roll for a long amount of time. You want to kind of just do it as like a primer. If you guys are interested in a video just solely about foam rolling, because I know this is something that people kind of like throw around. They just throw around the term foam rolling or self-myofascial release and don't really explain what it is. So if that's something that would interest you guys, definitely let me know in the comments and I can record an entire video just on foam rolling. But that's all we're gonna talk about for now. So to recap, tip number 1 is to get in a good general warm-up by raising your core temperature and doing some dynamic stretches. Tip number 2 is to activate your muscles, and this is actually more of a specific warm-up. So literature says that you should be doing a general warm-up before and then move on to more sport-specific or exercise-specific movements in a specific warm-up. What that means is you're waking up the muscles, you're waking up the energy systems, and you're priming your body to be ready for what you're about to do. For example, take a sprinter. If you're going to run 100 meters, you're gonna do a general warm up, maybe jog a couple laps, you're gonna do some dynamic stretching drills, and then you're gonna gradually increase your running speed, your running power, and work up to that 100-meter full-out sprint so that when it comes to the gun going off, your body is ready to perform at 100%. The same thing applies to lifting, where you want to do your general warm-up and then your specific warm-up should apply to what you're about to do. Now I'm going to talk particularly about hypertrophy, which is muscle growth, and a big factor in muscle hypertrophy that a lot of people talk about, and the literature is really starting to support this more and more as it becomes more of a topic of interest, is establishing mind-muscle connection. This is also called attentional focus sometimes, and basically what it is mentally cueing yourself to use a specific muscle to execute a movement. So let's say you want to do a lateral raise. A lot of people are prone to use their traps and kind of shrug when they do a lateral raise, but when you use mind-muscle connection, you really think about using your medial delt and raising up with your delt. So if you are using mind-muscle connection, you're able to isolate that delt rather than letting your trap take over and letting it be a shrug. So that's just one example of using mind-muscle connection, but mind-muscle connection has been shown to increase EMG, which is basically your muscle activation, and it doesn't detract from the other muscles, it just increases the muscle in which you are focusing on, which is really cool. This happens because you're activating specific neuromuscular pathways and basically letting your body know, hey, I need to recruit this muscle, and that's what we're doing. So you can do this by working through some exercises around each of the joints you're going to be using. So if you're doing a shoulder day, for example, you might want to do some light presses, maybe some rotator cuff work to make sure your shoulder joint is nice and stabilized. I always like to include some scapular push-ups, which teaches your scapula to protract and retract, which is really important for any sort of upper body work, really at all, especially if you're training back. And then this also applies to lower body. So you guys have seen me talk ad nauseum about activating the glutes before your workout. I have a whole video about glute activation tips, and there has been a lot of research on this, specifically by Brett Contreras, who you guys have seen on my channel before. He talks a lot about the importance of waking up the glutes, especially because they can be kind of like a sleeping giant syndrome because we sit so much. So waking up your muscles before you jump into your workout just ensures that you're going to be getting the most out of every rep, out of every contraction, and really maximizing your workout. So to recap, tip number 1 is warm up. Do a general warm up that raises your core temperature and prepares your body for activity. And tip number 2 is activation. So activate the muscles you're going to be working, get your neuromuscular pathways primed, and do a specific warm up to the workout you're about to jump into. Number 3 is time your rest periods. It can be really easy to have the incorrect rest periods. Generally, the rule of thumb is 30 to 60 seconds for any sort of isolation or endurance-based exercise. So that's gonna be like a lateral raise again, or something that is a lot higher rep, even if it's like a higher rep squat. And that uses a different energy pathway than, let's say, a power explosive movement, which takes a little bit longer to recover. So if you're doing more of a strength-based or a big compound movement, like let's say a heavy back squat, then you're gonna want 2, maybe even 3, maybe up to 5 minutes between your sets, and that's more of like a powerlifting style workout, powerlifting style training. Whereas if you're more focused on hypertrophy, then you're gonna want to keep your rest periods shorter. You're gonna want 30 to 60 seconds, maybe 90 if you're really feeling fatigued. You do want to feel pretty recovered before you start your next set, but you don't want to let it go too long. Essentially, keeping your rest periods shorter when you're doing a hypertrophy style workout is going to increase growth hormone and increase the metabolic stress on the muscle, both of which are beneficial for hypertrophy. However, there are some studies that disagree with that, saying that your overall volume, which is your reps times sets times weight, is more important. So longer rest periods let you use higher weight, therefore your volume's greater, but it could go either way. Personally, I really like to make sure that my workouts are dense, that my rest periods are concise, and that I'm keeping my heart rate up. I'm like in the zone, because if I let my rest periods get too long, I get distracted, I don't feel like I'm working very hard. So it can really come down to what you personally prefer, but I recommend keeping your rest periods around 30 to 60 seconds, maybe up to 90 seconds or a minute if you are doing something particularly heavy or particularly taxing. Personally, I really like to have dense, quick workouts that are taxing to my metabolism. So I like to have short rest periods that keeps my heart rate elevated, that make sure I burn as many calories as possible, and it just keeps me in the zone. Tip number 4 is to increase the intensity of the exercise itself. There are a couple ways to do this, and my favorites are to either add a band and have the torque be doubled, or do a slower eccentric, which means that the stretching portion of the exercise is slowed down. So what I mean by doubling the torque of an exercise, it's demanding that your muscles exert force in more than one direction. So if you see me put a band below or above my knees, that means that you're doubling the torque that you're putting on your glutes. Let's say in the Romanian deadlift, for example, you're asking your glutes to perform hip extension by thrusting the hips through, and you're also demanding abduction at the hips, which means that you're using your glutes to force your knees out. So you guys always see me putting bands in my lower body workouts, and that essentially adds an element of abduction, or making the hips work by pushing the knees out. So it basically adds another layer to your workouts. It makes them more difficult, and it activates more of your muscle at once. So I find it to be very efficient, very effective, and I've found really good results with it in my lower body workouts. You can also do it in your upper body workouts. The second option I want to talk about is slowing down the eccentric portion of the exercise. So shown with an RDL, that is going to be when you're bending over and you're stretching your glutes and your hamstrings. The eccentric is when the muscle is lengthening, and the concentric is when the muscle is shortening. So for example, with your bicep, that would be, with the eccentric is your bicep lengthening, and the concentric is your bicep flexing. The reason why it's great to slow down the eccentric is because you're actually stronger in the eccentric position, so you can go slower and make the eccentric just as hard as a concentric and basically get the most out of that motion. The eccentric also creates more muscle damage, and essentially growing your muscle means that you're damaging it and then rebuilding it larger. So more muscle damage may increase hypertrophy. It also does cause more soreness typically, so do proceed with caution. If you've never done slow eccentrics, don't just like jump into it and do a slow eccentric on every single exercise. Try it with one and, you know, build up from there. But that's why things like walking lunges or RDLs or things that really emphasize the eccentric portion, those get you a lot more sore than, let's say, a barbell deadlift or regular conventional deadlift, because there is a lot more stretching going on. The eccentric is a lot more taxing. Another benefit of the slow eccentric is that it really lets you feel the movement, and I find this particularly important for glute training and shoulder training and rear delt training and back training. Literally any muscle group, I find this very important because that it helps you establish that mind-muscle connection. If you take your time, work through that range of motion, and then think about squeezing your muscle to get out of that eccentric and contracting it hard, I find that that really helps me establish my mind-muscle connection, make sure my form is good, and overall just improves the quality of the reps that I'm doing. And you guys have probably heard a bunch of times that it is quality over quantity when it comes to lifting, especially lifting for hypertrophy. You want to make sure you maintain good form, are really feeling the desired muscle working, and I find that the eccentric can help that. Even if you're not using it for like improved muscle damage, do it with a lighter weight and help you get that mind-muscle connection down if you're struggling with that. So 2 ways to increase the intensity of exercises themselves are to add a band to either double the torque or change the strength curve as with like a banded push-up, or you can do a slow eccentric, which has been shown to increase muscle damage and also helps you establish that mind-muscle connection and get quality reps. A quick recap before we jump into number 5. Number 1, get in a good general warm-up. Number 2, get in a good specific warm-up. Number 3, time your rest periods. Number 4, change your exercises and make them harder by adding a band or doing a slower eccentric. And tip number 5 is to consume protein after your workout. This can either be like a protein shake, a whole food meal like chicken and rice, or maybe some egg whites and potatoes. And this is really important because some studies have shown that protein after a workout is especially anabolic. Anabolic means muscle building, but others say that the post-workout anabolic window is not as small as previously thought, and it's actually not that important to make sure you get protein after your workout. So there are kind of 2 different schools of thought here. Some even go as far to say that like only your daily total in protein really matters. But I find that there tends to be more evidence pointing towards protein after your workout being important, and that is personally what I prefer because it makes sense. If you are in the gym, you're tearing down your muscles. That's what lifting weights does. It damages your muscles, and then you want to rebuild them. And personally, I want to kickstart the rebuilding process as soon as possible by providing my body with the building blocks necessary to rebuild them, and those are amino acids. And amino acids are what is in any sort of protein source. The reason why I particularly like using a protein powder for this is because depending on what protein you use, it can be a lot easier digested. It can spike muscle protein synthesis faster, and it can spike it for longer. I like to have a whey casein blend, which is what PE Science Select Protein is. That's my supplement sponsor, and I've been using their protein for years and love it. All the flavors are amazing, and I've found really good results with it. And the reason why I like Select Protein is it is a blend of whey and casein. Whey protein is a lot faster digesting and will spike your insulin, which means that it will get to work right away, rebuilding your muscles, allow those processes to get jump started, and then the casein prolongs that muscle protein synthesis spike and keeps it going for longer than if you were to drink whey alone. So this whey casein blend is really important for maximizing muscle protein synthesis. Another thing that's really important to maximize muscle protein synthesis is an amino acid called L-leucine. And L-leucine has been shown to be one of the most important markers that spikes muscle protein synthesis. So you can either choose whole food sources that are really rich in leucine, like meat, poultry, fish, I think eggs maybe, dairy, legumes like beans and lentils. That's why I like Select Protein. There are lots of reasons, and it's also really convenient, so you can bring it to the gym and just fill up your shaker whenever you're done with your workout and get that quick hit of protein. As you guys know, I do have a discount code for pescience.com. 30% off with code Marie. Again, it is totally up to you. If you want to wait, you can wait, 2-4 hours. You can wait a while after your workout, especially if you're one of those people that's not very hungry after you train. Personally, I'm usually starving after I train. That's what I like. It's up to you. But personally, I find that if there's data supporting the fact that protein post-workout can be really beneficial, then I'm gonna do that, because even though there's some data to suggest that it's not as important as we thought, it's definitely not gonna hurt you to have it post-workout, So there's potential benefits, and to me, I'm gonna try to get those benefits if I can. Whereas there are no potential risks. So